Stephen Bartlett has built the most disarming room in media, and probably without meaning to, the most revealing. His studio has 9 cameras you can't see, shoes off, a carpet and music picked from your own childhood to put you at ease. He even controls the air, keeping the CO2 below 1,000 parts per million, because he's read that stale air makes for worse conversation.
I spent 5 hours reading the research. I'm ready to go. I've watched all the videos. I know everything about this person. I know their kids, their favorite music, everything.
And Stephen tells you how he wants his conversations to play out because he wrote it down as Law 3 in his own book. You must never disagree. This third law to never disagree is the critical skill that will allow you to become an effective negotiator, speaker, salesperson, business leader, writer, and partner. This is exactly why his podcast produces stories that his guests really want you to know, as well as some they'd prefer to hide. This is Dara, the CEO of Uber. He took it over when it was losing money and brought it back into the green. And one of his biggest selling points for Stephen is his transparency.
And one of the great ones I take away from you is honesty.
Yeah, honesty is so powerful.
He explains how he knows what it's like to lose everything. Stephen asks him where his values come from, and his answer is very sincere.
Can you take me to that earliest context so I can understand how and why you are the way that you are?
We were not safe there, and at one point we had these Revolutionary Guards come into the backyard. They were actually going after our neighbor's house, and one of their guns went off, and bullets went through our living room.
He says that feeling never left him, and he says he dearly holds onto the security he has now.
I think Americans underestimate what this place represents in its ideals, right? Which is if you build something, it's yours, there's a rule of law, it can't be taken away from you. That is not true for the majority of the population of the world.
If you build something, it's yours. It can't be taken away. Now let's take a look at what the episode is really about, and the title is a little bit of a giveaway.
Those 9 million drivers' careers that you have will be out of work, conceivably, talking about being honest about the situation.
So if you build anything, it's yours, unless it's a career within his very business. Stephen then asks the one question that millions of people care about, and he's clearly thought deeply about their fates.
What do the 9 million people do?
I don't know.
And you can see how a little smile cracks across his face. He gives some spiel about how AI will offer new opportunities. At the end of the day, he's the chief executive. This isn't a forecast happening to him, it's a plan he's choosing to build. And to his credit, despite not openly challenging the guy, Stephen does raise this point earlier in the discussion.
I've not been able to get an answer on that, really, I think, from the experts in AI that I've interviewed, which is like, what do those 70 or 80% of people do?
And there is at least some life-affirming advice on offer here.
To me, the most important skill in life is the skill of working hard. When you see the top athletes, look at Ronaldo, look at Michael Jordan, etc. Of course they're talented, and their talent level is world levels. But the thing that changes that's different about the elite athletes than the non-elite athletes, and I'm talking elite, is they work their asses off. Now that anyone can vibe code, just learn to work hard.
So the solution is just working hard like Michael Jordan or Ronaldo. It's this classically detached CEO kind of advice that got him torn apart in the comments. I'm sick of this world, this chasing money and all. Life was so much better before. I'm confused. Why work hard when you have been told AI is going to replace you? Billionaires telling normal folks to work harder while single-handedly stealing from them is evil. And when you start to look closely, some of these points become running themes in other episodes. Stephen's Law 3 is so passive that it allows the guests to contradict themselves. This is super interesting to me. I was looking at the videos and noticed how many of you watch these videos but still haven't subscribed. And many of you have actually told us that you're unsubscribed from the channel just randomly. So just a quick favor to ask all of you. Please could you check right now if you've hit the subscribe button, if you are a regular viewer of these videos and like what we do here. As we're approaching a really significant landmark on the channel in terms of a subscriber number. If there's one simple free thing you could do to help us, my team and everyone here to keep this show free and to allow us to improve it year after year, week over week, all we ask is that you just hit that subscribe button and double check if you've hit it. It's the only thing I'll ever ask of you. And if you do it, in return, I'll make sure every single week, every single year, we work to uncover information nobody else wants to talk about and show you the ugly parts of the world that need exposing now more than ever. I won't let you down on this, but please help us with a quick subscribe. I really appreciate it. Let's continue with the video. Take Jeremy Grantham. who managed $165 billion at his peak. By this point, Stephen's been using hypothetical characters to understand how a financial crash might affect them, like Dave the taxi driver or Jenny the receptionist.
Is there any countries you wouldn't live in if you were Dave or Jenny?
I think I have to refuse to answer this on the grounds that it might tend to incriminate me.
Oh, okay. So you're saying don't live in the United States?
Well, I have American children and grandchildren.
Why not the United States?
But the moment Stephen asks why, his performative refusal drops away.
It holds out too much chance that the social contract is dissolving.
He's right, and he should know, as he helped build this world by creating some of the first index funds back in the 1970s. He made a fortune within the system, and now he's telling everyone that it destroyed the social contract. And he's not the only one fleeing it either. Peter Thiel left for Argentina for similar motives. Now, you've probably noticed the influx of ex-intelligence operatives appearing on podcasts and sharing knowledge that apparently no one else possesses. It works a bit like this. You hear a claim once from one person, then you hear it again from a second believable person, and so on. They just said the same thing. It's one claim going around and around and around, and you've got to ask why that is and what the ultimate purpose is. Gavin DeBecker runs anti-assassination security for powerful figures like Jeff Bezos, and he designed the Supreme Court's protection systems. And he offered a very familiar perspective on Jeffrey Epstein, and one that isn't wrong but has created a dead end that's pretty much shut down the story.
What he was is a construct. He's a created construct. Money, wealth, private jet, private island, fun, not married, young girls, lots of things. So he was a construct. The money, $500 million of money came from Les Wexner, who's a wealthy guy who owned, I don't know what he's doing now, Victoria's Secret, big donator to the state of Israel. And $500 million was transferred to Epstein along with power of attorney.
So who is that ally?
Israel.
DeBecker admits he's not much of a man of evidence and that it's all about intuition. Stephen fairly asks for something stronger than a hunch.
There's no direct evidence, but what people are essentially doing is putting the pieces together to make a picture.
There is direct evidence. There's just not direct evidence I'm sharing at this moment.
He says he has proof, won't show it, and then sends you somewhere else to find it.
Which I've shared. I mean, I could do it for 40 minutes, but everybody can just go to ChatGPT. And, if you ask ChatGPT, make the best case for. It's a good thing for viewers to remember.
DeBecker must be joking if he's coming on here as some sort of intelligence authority and then defers to ChatGPT. So Stephen actually calls his bluff, and the result is predictable because obviously there is no direct evidence. They never gave us any, so we had to join the dots and work it all out for ourselves.
And exactly that,
Right.
As you said it, I asked ChatGPT, make the best case for Epstein being an Israel spy. Here is what it said. The case that Jeffrey Epstein functioned as an Israeli intelligence asset rests on a pattern alignment rather than direct proof.
DeBecker probably watched the podcast before heading on here because this is the next thing he says.
Not just me, by the way. You might already be there, and you've certainly had another guest sit here, and former CIA guy, Kirikow, how do you say his last name?
Yeah.
Am I close to how
You're
you say
close. It's closer than I would get.
Okay, good. And he was point blank in saying Israel.
He's right. Weeks earlier, CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou said it with a vivid story about Israeli spies inside US defense.
The FBI has identified 187 undeclared Israeli intelligence officers spread all across the United States, mostly at defense contractors trying to steal our secrets.
Do you think Jeffrey Epstein was a spy?
I believe very strongly he was a spy, yes.
And who do you think he was working for?
The Israelis. I'm confident it was the Israelis.
Why?
Jeffrey Epstein is kind of the stereotypical example that they give you in training for what's called an access agent.
Every former CIA officer has to send anything they say in public, whether that be books, articles, podcasts, to the agency's review board to be cleared first. Nothing really gets leaked on a big podcast by any ex-CIA agent. The only insights they're giving are the ones already on the public record for years. And it's packaged as groundbreaking new information. There's no talk of Jeffrey's high-level discussions with top politicians and executives. No discussions of the content uncovered in in the files. Nothing on the purpose of the operation or its victims or how it seemed to cut across global governments. They all quote the Israeli access agent theory, and the case for further discussion is closed. When a third spy takes the chair, it stops being subtle. Mike Baker spent 2 decades as a CIA field officer. He's the biggest glowy around, talking about mass manipulation as if it's a Tuesday at the agency, which it probably is.
I'm gonna recruit a bunch of journalists, right? And local journalists, and I'm gonna get them to publish stories, right? Maybe there's a radio station. I'll recruit somebody who can put stories on the radio. Technology has given the ability to do covert action campaigns, propaganda, disinformation, whatever you want to call it, a real jumpstart, right? So the concept is the same. I'm trying to influence opinion.
And then there's another, Andrew Bustamante, who also admits how telling so-called secrets is, in itself, a strategy of control and manipulation.
Plenty of secrets the government has that it tells the American people it doesn't know. It's just lying. Of course it knows, but it's working the common good to say, if you knew what we knew.
Which is a sentiment Gavin De Becker also echoes about aliens and UFOs.
A little bit like UFOs. Could the public handle it, is the question that's always asked in these cases.
When UFOs came roaring back into popularity, the show booked the makers of a documentary called The Age of Disclosure, and its star witness, Hal Puthoff, is a respected physicist. In the 1970s, the CIA hired him to run a program at Stanford testing whether people could spy with their minds. It was called Stargate, and he personally briefed the head of the CIA on what physicists claimed to see. The filmmaker Dan Farah, who is sitting alongside Hal, says this.
What is it that you believe that most people don't know or understand?
There has in fact been an 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligent life.
He really piles it on, collecting classified information from the military-industrial complex and blurting it out on the world's biggest podcast.
Of all the things you've heard, Dan, what was the most compelling story or anecdote that you heard that convinced you?
It was really just a sheer number of very high-level military government intelligence officials who were telling me in private settings to my face, that at a classified level, they know with absolute certainty this is real.
And the real proof is always just a few days away.
We have been told by our friends in government that the next tranche of evidence is likely to come out in the next 30 days or so.
The point of classified information is that it's classified. It's insanely legally protected. There's no such thing as sensitive information shared on a podcast of this level without explicit approval. Whatever you believe about aliens, they've sure made a few rich and famous media personalities who are very sure of themselves, like Luis Elizondo.
We are absolutely not alone in the universe. And I know these things are real because I was asked to investigate UFO incursions into controlled U.S. airspace by the Pentagon.
Elizondo has himself down as the following.
I've always been what I consider just the facts ma'am kind of guy, very, very data-driven. I don't really care about innuendos and suppositions and your opinion very much. I care about what the data says. If I was in a court of law and I was presenting this as evidence, we are well beyond reasonable doubt. The jury would have no choice but to convict.
As for his evidence, he's presented a set of real photographs of UFOs over the Capitol that turned out to be CGI from a movie and a scan of a 1954 comic. A UFO photo he held up at a 2024 congressional briefing turned out to be an irrigation circle you can find on Google Maps, and a mothership over a US embassy turned out to be a chandelier reflected in a window, with the photographer's own hairline visible in the shot. Despite him advertising decades of experience in various military departments and intelligence agencies, a Pentagon spokesperson said that Elizondo had no responsibilities with these programs at all. Back in the day, Joe Rogan went further than Stephen, and named the job a man like Elizondo and some other UFO conspiracy theorists might really be doing.
They're just using him as a useful idiot to just get out some silly story because they're covering up for the fact that there's some very advanced drone system that the United States government has that they're trying to keep under wraps.
It's not like Stephen's style is to ask these sorts of questions. Instead, letting the guest enjoy their time in the spotlight without too much friction unless he feels strongly about a particular topic. This might explain why politicians from all sides are now targeting it for their PR strategies. Everyone now is skeptical of the legacy media, so podcasts are the next frontier for reaching a younger political audience. But often, it's the exact same messages that are shared with the public. Kamala Harris turned up a year after losing the presidency presidency with a book to sell, and according to her explanations, her default slowly became something that was done to her. She blames the president's staff.
To the extent that the vice president is being attacked, resources were available but not used to defend the vice president in the way that they could have.
Stephen hands her the theory. They wanted her to be weaker, and she takes it.
So you're saying that you think they wanted you to be weaker in public perception because that kind of keeps you in your place?
I think that that was part of it. I do. I think that they decided that, there are far too many people in this world and in professional life who approach things with a zero-sum game.
She then mourns the podcast that might have been less safe and more challenging for her, Joe Rogan's, and again, she blames her team for it.
I regret that we didn't do it. I definitely regret that we didn't do it.
PR people can sometimes f things up for other people.
So just think, as someone who wanted to be president, she didn't even have the authority to decide which podcast to go on. Vance doesn't get away with it either, coming on in the midst of the Iran peace deal.
We are in a ceasefire that I feel very good about, that we announced. I know this will air later, but we announced the ceasefire. We announced the peace agreement with the Iranians yesterday.
Stephen, to his credit, didn't buy it and pushes him hard on it.
There's been lots of false deals. You flew out there to Pakistan and you flew right back. The deal wasn't done. I think I saw a report the other day that said the president has said roughly 30 times that there's a deal done or that there's a deal on the table. Usually on a Sunday, then it's not. I don't have any trust anymore.
And watch how little it takes to wave off and claim this is finally the end.
Well, this one's real. The Straits of Hormuz opens effectively immediately and the blockade is lifted effectively immediately.
Iran's government declared the strait closed again days later over new strikes in Lebanon, and there's debate about whether the deal will last. 330 ships remain anchored in the strait right now. While he's there, Vance takes his PR opportunity to clear a few things up.
There was a private message between you and a roommate where you said he was either a cynical asshole or America's Hitler. How do you go from that position to vice president of the same person?
A crazy journey, man. But I thought Donald Trump would be a failed president if he got elected. He was not. I thought that America's institutions were fundamentally functioning. They were not. I thought that the military leaders who told us this about a war were the scientific experts who told us this other thing about a pandemic. Fundamentally wise people who were mostly right. I was wrong.
That's an awful lot to admit to being clueless about as a US senator. Vance then says that just a few years ago, he was completely manipulated by the American media, as if that's a good advertisement for his critical thinking.
I had no understanding of that from him from the outside. What I would see is, clips of him arguing with a journalist, and that was it. And that gives you a very, very one-dimensional view of a person. So yeah, I definitely from the inside have seen a much, much more multi-dimensional figure. And the entire American media in 2016 had convinced me, at least, that he was not a smart person.
Kamala and Vance have something in common here. Neither appears to have used their own brains. The errors of their ways are someone else's fault other than their own. As the Diary of a CEO format has evolved over time to invite high-profile guests, its appeal has remained consistent. It's all about exceptional people sharing exceptional stories, from politicians and billionaires to entrepreneurs, celebrities, and self-help gurus. Stephen has created an independent platform where personal experience, scientific views, and opinions are presented simultaneously. Now, of course, we all know that Stephen is a business person, and he isn't hiding it. As this third law suggests, being agreeable is important to his brand. And we see that play out in one of his many episodes on health and wellness, when world-famous health guru Shetty blurred the line between monk and entrepreneur.
I enjoyed being a monk as much as I enjoy understanding media. And that's really paradoxical for a lot of people, but that's just my truth. I enjoy building a business and learning about what it takes as much as I learn trying to understand how to meditate deeper and go internal. I enjoy and appreciate what I gain from all these pursuits. And I see them as being this beautiful, beautiful, symbiotic, synergetic combination of learning and life and experience.
Stephen allows this moment to be about Shetty. The camera lingers on his every word, and Stephen doesn't properly interject until Jay asks him to.
Does that answer your question?
100%.
Yeah.
So Stephen allows him to continue.
Society will give you a label. They'll say, okay, you're a monk. So act like and behave like a monk. We know what monks are. Here's the instruction manual of being a monk. And if you do anything other than the instruction manual there, then they'll say contradiction.
Yeah.
They'll say, you're a monk, how do you live in LA, Jay?
Yes.
You have a nice home. You make money, society then tries to enforce, and if you step outside of the implicit instructions of the box that we've labeled you in, we go fraud.
I grew up with the belief for a long time that if you were truly spiritual, you had to be poor, you had to have nothing, you had to be completely detached and disconnected. What if everyone in the world had access to what I have access to as a monk? That needs staff, it needs employees, it needs 8 cameras, it needs a microphone, it needs people, it needs teams, it needs a business.
Rich, monk, and businessman don't really belong together in the same sentence, which the commenters picked up on. Many feel like Jay Shetty is trying to reconcile 2 identities. You'll also see tons of comments referring to the wizards of nothing that cast nothing spells on each other, which comes from this reel. The point of this being, this episode is so full of proverbs, platitudes, and straight up BS that it pretty much sounds like verbal white noise. However, the main issue isn't whether a monk could make money. It all just felt too suspicious, and viewers started questioning whether the monk story was accurate at all. In February 2024, journalist John McDermott published an investigation in The Guardian that challenged some of the most important parts of Jay Shetty's public origin story. And it went viral when the YouTube channel Voidzilla interviewed him.
And he never misses an opportunity. Jay never misses an opportunity to remind people that he was a monk for 3 years.
Then the key allegation.
So I looked into it and I found ample evidence that he was actually stationed in Watford, which is a city just outside of London for the vast majority of the time that he was a monk, and that he had been in India for just a few months.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The investigation found his $7,400 master's degree from his coaching school listed universities that all denied any link with him. Other doctors or self-proclaimed health experts, people with titles we blindly follow, use his platform to blur the line between personal studies and health suggestions. Like Dr. Tara Swartz's debunked claim on visualization that was absolutely obliterated.
So this was an experiment done on 2 groups of weightlifters. They lifted no weights for 2 weeks. They just sat there and they visualized themselves lifting weights, and they had a 13% increase in muscle mass.
Interesting.
People should realize how much potential they have in their brains, like how capable they are.
Now watch the whole segment.
So we can tell our brain to grow muscle.
Have you been secretly doing that,
No,
Steve?
but I could be doing that instead. I've been going to the gym. It'd be much easier if I could just watch the football and tell myself that I'm lifting weights.
Stephen can't actually hide his skepticism here. Look at the frown on his face and you can see Law 3 begin to crack in real time.
Is that widely accepted as the truth?
It's in the book.
But he just about holds it together as the 2 of them chuckle along. And obviously, the full story is only available in her book. But I scrolled down to the video description and wasn't surprised to find the affiliate link. You can purchase Tara's book, The Source, here. And allowing guests to plug whatever books and business they want is evidently part of the podcast's commercial appeal.
I have a book coming out called Main Street Millionaire. Then you go to contrarianthinking.com and we have courses and free newsletters.
And that's where Dr. Daniel Amen enters the picture, as the whole premise of his medical personality is expertly analyzing brain scans. He argues that brain scans are massively underused.
Your prefrontal cortex is flat, and I don't like that. And then when I heard you played soccer, or when I read you played soccer, it's very common in my soccer players. How long did you play soccer for? And decreased activity in your left temporal lobe. And you right-handed? Yeah. So that can go with the irritability.
He's reading Stephen's scan, but both facts he gives about him can easily be found online, which is interesting since Dr. Amen isn't just a psychiatrist. He's a celebrity psychiatrist, having worked with everyone from Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, to Kim and Khloe Kardashian. Because if a random psychiatrist says a brain scan can reveal hidden problems in your mind, most people ignore him. But if that same psychiatrist is depicted at this caliber, suddenly the scan feels more credible. Mind you, these scans cost anywhere from $3,500 to $6,600. And the interventions he'll recommend for you mostly come down to this.
You want to do things that increase blood flow to your brain. So exercise, ginkgo. It's just one of the supplements I'm going to give you.
Those supplements are a business. BrainMD, his own line, sells products like Calm My Brain on subscription. Neuroscientists call the whole operation profitable but unproven, alleging that he's exposed tens of thousands of people, including children, to radiation for a scan no insurer will cover. As one doctor bluntly put it, he charges patients thousands to inject them with a radioactive dye and show them pretty colored pictures of their brains that just prove nothing. And this is when we can see how the Diary of a CEO can let compromised individuals get away with things. things. Take, for example, this conversation he had on a different podcast.
Don't you want to try and disprove your method in order to prove how strong it is?
So at this point in my career, no.
A SPECT scan takes 3D images of the brain, looking at blood flow and activity. Dr. Amen says the images can be a powerful tool to diagnose underlying problems.
I have more experience in this than anybody probably in the history of the world.
Do you not feel that it's an issue that there is no randomized control data?
You know, I went and got a brain scan by this guy called Daniel Amen.
How do you know what is actually going on in that person's brain without looking?
By asking them questions, by doing
That's complete crap, Mike. So from the beginning of the time I've done imaging, and that's why I write. That's why online you can take our brain health assessment, know what, based on our work, what type of brain you have. You have a balanced brain, spontaneous brain, that's my ADD group, a persistent brain, my OCD group, sensitive or cautious brain. So these symptoms tend to go with these patterns. So I think people can benefit from my work for free, right? They can go to the library and get Change Your Brain, Change Your Pain, or Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, or any of the 40 books I've written, or they can listen to our podcast.
So the scan isn't necessary?
But I would argue psychiatry is broken, and we need to be viewed as a real medical specialty with imaging, because if you don't look, you don't know.
The comments say it all here, for example. What a masterclass in productive confrontation without needing to be dramatic, emotional, or sensationalized. And you could tell he did not plan on being pressed on any of this at all, and it feels like people learn something rather than being fed something one-directionally. Yet Stephen himself has had many investments in the health space and a lot of vested interests. He names one here called Zoe, which is a UK-based health food brand.
I said to you before we start recording, I've had 2 of my guests come here and tell me about Zoe individually. So I think it was Davina McCall and Gabby Logan who both mentioned it. So I think that's the kind of the moment in time that you've arrived perfectly in from a Zoe perspective.
What the audience didn't know at the time was that Bartlett announced his investment in Zoe on LinkedIn on March 15th, 2023, just weeks after releasing this video, stating that Tim had inspired him so much and that their episode was one of the most downloaded with over 5 million streams.
What is Zoe, if someone hasn't heard of Zoe before?
Zoe is a personalized nutrition company that I founded nearly 6 years ago with 2 my co-founders who came to one of my talks. I was talking about the diet myth and the microbiome, and they came up to me and said, we think what you're doing is really exciting. We'd love to talk about getting a company together to personalize this.
It wouldn't be until 2024 that the UK Advertising Standards Authority ruled one of Stephen Bartlett's advertisements for Zoe as misleading to, quote, because the ad omitted material information about Stephen Bartlett being an investor in Zoe. Even years before the Diary of a CEO became one of the world's biggest podcasts, Stephen was giving similarly glowing endorsements about Huel, to which he was a prolific investor of. Before the CEO had barely said a word, Stephen was already calling Huel a company that's very close to my heart, praising the product and thanking its founder, telling listeners he relied on it to function. It's a pretty constant plug on the podcast.
Quick one. I talk to you guys about Huel a lot, so I'm going to do a quick intermission. The salted caramel flavor protein from Huel, which is only 105 calories and has 26 vitamins and minerals and 20 grams of protein. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I have a glass, and then at night time, after I've been to the gym, straight after the gym, I have a glass. It tastes amazing. I've already gone through 1 tub of this. I'm actually on my 2nd tub and I've got 2 more tubs to go, but genuinely for me has been a game changer. And then a company I love so much, and a company I'm an investor in, I'm on the board of, recently announced a new product which absolutely spoke to exactly where I was in my life, and that is Huel, and they announced Daily Greens.
Regulators in the UK eventually took issue with the lack of transparency around Stephen's relationship with Huel, ruling that consumers were unlikely to understand his financial connection to the company. And when more serious questions were later raised about those relationships, a spokesperson from the Diary of a CEO had an explanation. So in essence, they're admitting to a format they've designed to strategically give a voice to individuals without much pressure, which is commercially ideal for everyone involved. But that's not to take away from the podcast. It's incredibly engaging and on point, allowing the show to become one of the most important business podcasts in the world. Yet, it all ties into his Law 15. The frame matters more than the picture. The The weight of a package has a big impact on how it is received and the value perceived by consumers. Reality is nothing more than perception, and context is king, i.e. 90% fat-free sounds better than contains 10% fat, which means the framing matters more than the substance. And to the show's credit, this often works when the guests expose or compromise themselves without being interrogated, but it's also creating a form of media that creates characters and narratives we accept without question. It's about the information ecosystem we half listen to in the background of our lives, where headlines become truth by repetition and familiarity rather than through evidence. Stephen isn't platforming free thinkers, he's running a business that sells you free thinking as a product and pocketing the markup. And this isn't really about Stephen Bartlett or the Diary of a CEO. It's more so asking ourselves the question of what we are willing to believe, and how little we ask of the people selling it to us. And within all of this, there's a debate on what podcasts started off as and what they're becoming today. They were supposed to be the antidote, the place you went to because nobody could buy the room or kill the awkward questions. But when the trust runs out, you end up with freedom of speech hanging in an awkward balance with freedom of money. A place to talk and transact while beaming out thousands of messages to younger audiences everywhere.